The stars looked cold and distant from the observation deck of the Kothvar command ship. Admiral Zeth Thul stood with his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the blue-green world that turned slowly below them. Earth, the locals called it. Such a simple name for what would soon become another jewel in the hegemony's crown. "Admiral," came the voice of his aide, Commander Veltar. "The human delegation has arrived at the neutral station." Zexthal turned his massive head toward the younger officer. His species had evolved from pack hunters, and even after thousands of years of civilization, they still looked the part. Sharp teeth, predator eyes, and claws that could tear through metal. It made negotiations so much easier when the other side could see exactly what they were dealing with. "Good. Have they been informed of the standard terms?" "Yes, sir. Submit to vassal status. Provide yearly tribute of resources and population, or face complete annihilation." Veltar paused, checking his datapad. The terms were transmitted in their native language, along with historical recordings of what happened to the last 12 species who refused. Zexthul nodded. The recordings were quite effective. The glassing of Terrell Prime usually convinced even the most stubborn species to see reason. Entire continents turned to radioactive glass in mere hours. Cities that had stood for millennia reduced to glowing craters. Populations that had numbered in the billions simply gone. "What do we know about these humans?" the Admiral asked, moving to his command chair. Veltar activated a holographic display. The image of a bipedal creature appeared standing upright on 2 legs with only 2 arms. They looked almost fragile compared to the Kothvar's powerful build. Standard carbon-based life form. They've only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology appears primitive by our standards. Single-planet civilization with some basic orbital installations. Population approximately 8 billion. Individuals, weapons capabilities, kinetic projectiles, primitive energy weapons, basic nuclear technology, nothing that could pose a threat to even our oldest ships. Tar scrolled through more data. They appear to have some form of planetary defense grid, but our scans suggest it's primarily designed to intercept asteroids and space debris. Zexthal laughed. A sound like grinding metal. Asteroid defense against the hegemony fleet. How charmingly naive. The communication console chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from the neutral station. "Admiral, we're receiving a response from the human delegation. Put it through." The main view screen activated, showing a conference room aboard the neutral station. 3 humans sat at a simple metal table. They wore dark blue uniforms with small insignias that meant nothing to Zexthul. The center figure, an older human with gray hair, stood up slowly. "I am Ambassador Harrison, of the United Earth Government. We have received your terms and reviewed the historical data you provided." Zexthul leaned forward in his chair. This was usually where the pleading began. The desperate offers of negotiation, the promises of compliance, the tears and begging. He had seen it all before, and the Admiral prompted. Ambassador Harrison looked directly into the camera. His face showed no fear, no desperation, no anger, just a calm, almost sad expression. "We respectfully decline your terms. We request that you leave our space immediately." Silence filled the command bridge. LR's mandibles clicked nervously. The other bridge officers exchanged glances. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever responded quite like this. "I'm sorry," Zexthul said slowly. "Did you just say you decline?" "Yes, Admiral. We decline to become vassals of the Kothvar hegemony. We also decline to provide tribute, and we respectfully request that you remove your forces from Earth space within the next 24 hours. Zexthul stood up, his full height making him tower over his command console. "Perhaps you did not understand the recordings we sent. Those were real events, real worlds, real populations that no longer exist because they made the same choice you appear to be making." Harrison nodded. "We understood perfectly. The destruction was quite thorough. We're sorry for the loss of life those civilizations suffered." "Then you understand what will happen to your world if you maintain this position." "We understand what you believe will happen," Harrison replied. "But we still must respectfully decline your offer." The word respectfully hung in the air. Zexthul had conquered 47 star systems. He had received the surrender of countless species. He had heard every possible response to the hegemony's demands. But never once had anyone said respectfully while refusing to surrender. "You're being respectful," Zexthal said, while essentially declaring war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. "We're not declaring war, Admiral. We're simply declining your offer and asking you to leave. There's a difference," whispered something to his admiral, but Zeththul waved him away. This was fascinating. The humans appeared to genuinely believe they could refuse the hegemony and survive. Either they were the most delusional species he had ever encountered, or they knew something he didn't. "Ambassador Harrison, let me be very clear about your situation. My fleet contains 200 ships, each capable of destroying every major city on your world. Behind me is the full might of the HFY hegemony, over 50,000 vessels, weapons that can crack planets, and the experience of conquering half the galaxy. What exactly makes you think you can refuse our offer?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was even gentler than before. "Admiral, we don't want any trouble. We just want to be left alone. Surely in a galaxy this large, there's room for one small world to choose its own path." "No," Zexthul said flatly. "There isn't. The galaxy belongs to the strong. The weak serve or they die. This is the natural order." "That's one way to see things," Harrison agreed. "But it's not the only way." The Admiral felt his temper beginning to rise. The calm, reasonable tone was somehow more infuriating than screaming. Would have been, "I'm going to give you one more chance, human. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to live as vassals. Your cities will remain standing. Your children will grow up to serve the hegemony. Refuse, and every human life will end in fire." Harrison looked at his two companions. They nodded almost imperceptibly. "Admiral Zexthal of the HFY hegemony, this is humanity's final answer. We respectfully decline your offer. We ask again that you please leave our space. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. Zexthal stared at the blank screen for several seconds. Around him, the bridge crew waited in stunned silence. "Sir," finally asked, "your orders?" The Admiral sat back down heavily. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't angry or defiant in the way he understood. They weren't pleading or negotiating. They had simply said no, as if refusing the hegemony was the most natural thing in the world. "Commander, compile everything we know about human military capabilities. I want a complete analysis of their defensive systems, fleet strength, and weapons technology. Sir, our scans show they have perhaps 50 small vessels, primitive fusion drives, basic hull plating. Their most powerful weapons appear to be nuclear devices that wouldn't scratch the paint on our shields. Then explain to me why they're not afraid." Beltar consulted his datapad again. "Perhaps they're simply too primitive to understand the threat. Some species lack the cognitive ability to properly assess danger." Zexthal considered this. It was possible he had encountered species before that were too simple to understand what was happening to them. But something about the human ambassador's tone suggested otherwise. Harrison had understood perfectly well what the hegemony was offering. He just didn't seem to care. "Sir, the fleet is requesting orders. Should we begin bombardment of military targets?" "No, not yet." Zeththul stood up and walked back to the observation window. The blue world below looked so peaceful, so unaware of the massive guns pointed at it. "Signal the fleet. We withdraw to the edge of the system and wait." "Sir, 24 hours. They asked for 24 hours. We'll give them that much time to reconsider. And if they don't reconsider?" Zexthal's reflection looked back at him from the armored glass. He had destroyed worlds before. It was never pleasant, but it was sometimes necessary. The strong ruled, the weak served. This was the way of things. But something about the humans bothered him. Their calm certainty, their polite refusal, the way they had said please, while essentially telling the hegemony's greatest fleet to go away. "If they don't reconsider," he said slowly, "then we'll give them the same choice we gave all the others: surrender or burn." Behind him, Veltar made a note in his log. Another day, another primitive species, refusing to see reason. The outcome was inevitable, of course. It always was. But as the HFY fleet pulled back to the edge of Earth's solar system, Admiral Zexthal found himself wondering about that word the humans kept using respectfully. What kind of species remained respectful while staring down annihilation? He supposed he would find out soon enough. The 24 hours passed slowly. Long-range sensors showed no unusual activity from Earth, no massive mobilization of their tiny fleet, no desperate construction of new defenses, no attempts to contact other species for help. Nothing. When the deadline arrived, Zexathol opened communications with the neutral station one more time. Ambassador Harrison appeared on screen, looking exactly as calm as he had the day before. "Admiral, have you reconsidered our request? Have you reconsidered yours?" Zexthul replied. "I'm afraid not. We must again ask you to leave our space. Then you leave me no choice." Harrison nodded sadly. "I understand. We're sorry it has to be this way." Sorry. They were sorry. As if the destruction of their entire species was somehow regrettable but unavoidable, Zexthul cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Begin bombardment of military targets. Start with their orbital stations." "Yes, sir." The first Cathar ships moved into Earth orbit, their massive guns charging. Whatever secrets the humans thought they had, whatever delusions of power they maintained, reality was about to teach them the truth about their place in the galaxy. The strong ruled, the weak served, and humanity was about to learn which one they were. The silence was the first thing that bothered High Command. Fleet Admiral Zethul's 200 ships had moved into Earth orbit exactly as planned. Long-range sensors showed them taking positions around the human homeworld. The first shots had been fired at orbital defense platforms, then nothing. Supreme Commander Korval stood in the central command chamber of the Hegemony's capital ship, watching displays that should have been showing victory reports. Instead, they showed empty space where the fleet should have been. "Any communication from Admiral Zexthul?" he asked for the 10th time in the past hour. "No, sir. All ships went silent approximately 6 hours ago. Last transmission was confirmation that they were beginning bombardment of human defensive positions." Korval's 4 eyes narrowed. "Equipment failure." "Unlikely, sir. 200 ships don't all suffer communication failures at the same time." The Supreme Commander walked between the massive tactical displays. Each one showed the same thing: the empty space around Earth where his fleet should have been. Long-range sensors detected no debris fields, no energy signatures from battle, no trace that 200 Kavar warships had ever existed, launch probe ships. "I want to know what happened." 3 days later, the probe ships returned with footage that made no sense. Earth hung peacefully in space, exactly as it had before. Human orbital stations continued their slow rotations. Small civilian ships moved between them on routine flights. There was no sign of battle, no damaged installations, no indication that the most powerful fleet in the local sector had ever been there. "This is impossible," Korval muttered, reviewing the footage for the 15th time. "Ships don't just vanish." His aide, a younger Keithvar named Texanol, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, should we report to High Command?" "Report what?" "That we sent a fleet to conquer a primitive world, and it disappeared without a trace." Korval's voice carried the edge of frustration. "They'll think we've lost our minds." But protocol was protocol. The report went up the chain of command, each level treating it with increasing disbelief. By the time it reached the Hegemony Council, the official response was predictable. "Send another fleet, larger this time." The second fleet contained 500 ships under Admiral Kexmore, one of the Hegemony's most experienced commanders. Kexmore had personally overseen the conquest of 12 systems. He did not believe in impossible disappearances. "Humans are tricky," he told his officers before departure. "Clearly they have some kind of stealth technology we weren't prepared for. We'll go in with active scanning, full shields, weapons charged. Whatever happened to Zexathol won't happen to us." The second fleet vanished exactly like the first 100 ships gone without a trace. No distress signals, no weapon signatures, no debris. The probe ships that followed found Earth exactly as peaceful as before, its inhabitants going about their daily lives as if nothing had happened. High Command was no longer dismissive. Emergency meetings were called. Intelligence analysts pored over every scrap of data about the human system. Scientists proposed theories ranging from hidden alien artifacts to natural spatial anomalies. The third fleet was even larger. 1,000 ships under Admiral Nexrion, who had conquered more worlds than any other living Cathvar. If anyone could solve the mystery of Earth, it would be her. The third fleet also vanished. By now, word was spreading throughout the Hegemony. The impossible was happening. 3 fleets, nearly 2,000 ships total, had simply ceased to exist. Other species under HFY rule began to whisper among themselves. Tributary worlds exchanged nervous glances. If the mighty hegemony could lose entire fleets to a single primitive world, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? "This is becoming embarrassing," declared Chancellor Vexel at the Emergency Council session. 3 fleets lost to a species that barely understands faster than light travel. The entire sector is starting to question our strength, which is exactly why we can't stop now, replied War Leader. If we withdraw, every vassal species will see it as weakness. We'll face rebellions throughout our territory. The 4th Fleet was different. Instead of a single massive assault, they sent it in waves with communication probes scattered throughout the formation. If something was destroying HFY ships, they would at least get some kind of warning. They did. The first wave of the 4th Fleet managed to transmit for almost 3 minutes before going silent. The recordings were played and replayed in hegemony command centers across the galaxy. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Yexar. We are approaching Earth orbital space. Human defensive installations appear minimal. Exactly as reported. Beginning engagement of wait. I'm reading some kind of energy buildup. Not from the human stations. From empty space itself. Command, are you receiving this? The space around us it's changing. Reality distortion readings are off the charts. What in the name of the ancestors is static, then silence? The second wave lasted 4 minutes. Their final transmission was even more disturbing. Command, this is Admiral Lexvor. The first wave is gone. Not destroyed. Gone. There's no debris, no energy residue. It's like they never existed. We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. The laws of physics appear to be command. You need to see this. Space itself is bending around us. Our instruments are reading impossible energy levels from what appears to be empty vacuum. We're going to try to withdraw. And Command, can you hear me? Something's happening to our communications array. No, wait. Something's happening to us. We're static. The 3rd wave never transmitted at all. High Command stared at the recordings in stunned silence. Scientists scrambled to explain gravitational anomalies and reality distortions. Military analysts tried to understand how empty space could generate energy readings. Sir, one of the younger analysts said hesitantly, what if we're thinking about this wrong? Supreme Commander Korval, now personally overseeing the Earth situation, turned toward the speaker. Explain. What if the humans aren't using technology to defend themselves? What if there's something else entirely? Such as I don't know, sir. But we've been assuming they're a primitive species, with hidden weapons. What if they're not primitive at all? The suggestion was quietly dismissed, but it planted a seed of doubt. The 5th and 6th Fleets were sent together with strict orders to maintain constant communication and withdraw at the first sign of trouble. Both fleets lasted almost an hour before vanishing. Their final transmissions spoke of human ships that shouldn't be possible and weapons that violated known physics. The last message from Admiral Rexall of the 6th Fleet was particularly disturbing. Command, the human vessels are there. They're not entirely in normal space. They phase in and out of our reality. Our weapons pass right through them, but theirs strike us with impossible force. They're using gravitational manipulation on a scale we've never seen. How does a primitive species develop this kind of technology, Command? I don't think they're primitive at all. I think we've made a terrible mistake in coming here. We're going to try emergency withdrawal, but they're blocking our hyperspace generators. They're not just defending themselves, they're toying with us. The transmission ended with what sounded like laughter in the background. Human laughter. By the time the 7th Fleet was assembled, the entire hegemony was in an uproar. Vassal species were openly questioning HFY authority. Some tributary worlds had stopped sending their required resources. 3 systems had declared independence and dared the weakened hegemony to stop them. The 7th Fleet was commanded by Admiral Dexul, the hero of the Outer Rim, conqueror of the Vexari Empire. If anyone could succeed where 6 fleets had failed, it would be him. Dexul lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. His final transmission was the longest and most detailed yet. Command, this is Admiral Dexul. We've engaged the human defensive fleet. I need to stress that everything we thought we knew about this species is wrong. Their ships move through space-time itself as if it were an ocean. They're manipulating gravity, electromagnetic fields, and what appears to be the fundamental forces of physics. Our most powerful weapons barely scratch their hulls, while their attacks tear our ships apart at the molecular level. But here's what disturbs me most: command. They're not fighting like a desperate species defending their home world. They're fighting like teachers correcting unruly children. They announce their attacks before they make them. They give us chances to withdraw. They seem genuinely sad when we refuse to retreat. One of their ships just broadcast a message to us. A human female saying, "You don't have to die here. Please turn around and go home." They're offering us mercy. Command. The species we came to conquer is offering us mercy. I'm going to order a withdrawal. This isn't a battle we can win. This isn't a battle we should be fighting. There's something very wrong with our intelligence about humanity. They're not a primitive species that got lucky. There's something else entirely. Something that's been letting us think we were in control. The transmission continued for another hour, documenting impossible weapons and technology that seemed to operate outside known scientific principles. Then, like all the others, it cut to static. The 8th Fleet was the largest yet. 3,000 ships under Admiral Kexmore, the Hammer of Worlds. The entire hegemony military was now focused on the Earth problem. Other sectors were stripped of defenses to support the massive assault. Kexmore's fleet lasted almost 6 hours. His transmissions painted a picture of a battle that was less like warfare and more like a demonstration. Human ships that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Weapons that targeted individual atoms and rearranged them into harmless gas. Defensive systems that made Kethvar attacks simply cease to exist. "They're not even trying to destroy us quickly," Kexmore reported. "They're taking us apart slowly, giving us every opportunity to surrender and withdraw. They keep broadcasting messages, asking us to reconsider our aggression. They actually seem disappointed that we won't leave peacefully. Command, I have to tell you something. This isn't a war. This is an extermination, but not the kind we're used to. They're not exterminating us out of hatred or fear. They're exterminating us because we refuse to stop attacking them. It's like putting down a mad animal. Necessary, regrettable, but unavoidable." His final message was barely a whisper. "Command, I understand now. We never had a chance. We were never in control. They were humoring us. All of it. From the first ultimatum to now. They were giving us chances to walk away. 8 fleets. And they kept hoping we'd be smart enough to leave them alone. I think they're genuinely sorry this is happening." Static. 8 fleets. Nearly 10,000 ships. The entire might of the hegemony's finest commanders gone without a trace. Earth continued to rotate peacefully in its orbit, its inhabitants apparently unaffected by the battles that had raged around their world. In the hegemony capital, emergency sessions ran day and night. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. They had not been fighting a primitive species. They had been fighting something far beyond their understanding, and worse, that something had been trying to let them leave peacefully. The question now was whether the hegemony would be wise enough to take the hint, or foolish enough to send a 9th Fleet. Chancellor Vexel looked around the council chamber at the faces of his fellow leaders. Fear, confusion, and wounded pride weighed in their expressions. "The 9th Fleet will be different," he declared. "We'll send everything. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have. If humanity wants a war, they'll get one they'll never forget." In the back of the chamber, a few of the older counselors exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to suspect that humanity had never wanted a war at all, and that was somehow the most terrifying thing of all. Supreme Admiral Kolvrath stood at the center of the greatest war room the Kothvar hegemony had ever constructed. Around him, holographic displays showed every ship, every weapon, every soldier the Empire could gather. Numbers that should have been impossible to comprehend filled the air in glowing columns of data. 10,437 warships, the largest fleet in galactic history. "Admiral," came the voice of Fleet Coordinator Zaltek. "The final squadron from the outer territories has arrived. The 9th Fleet is complete." Kolvrath nodded slowly, his 4 eyes taking in the massive tactical display. Red dots representing Kethvar ships stretched across light years of space. Each dot represented hundreds or thousands of crew members. Each dot represented firepower that could level cities, and all of it was aimed at one small blue world that had somehow made 8 previous fleets simply vanish. "Status report," he commanded. All ships are operational, sir. We have stripped defensive fleets from every sector of the hegemony. Conquered worlds are now defended only by orbital platforms and ground-based weapons. Every available vessel has been committed to this operation. The admiral studied the numbers. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had never seen resources committed on this scale. The hegemony was betting everything on this single battle. What's the word from the territories? He asked. Zoltkin's expression darkened. 17 systems have declared independence since the 8th Fleet disappeared. The Vexari remnant has begun organizing resistance cells. 3 vassal species have stopped paying tribute entirely. And our response? We can't respond, sir. Every ship we have is here. Kolvroth understood the implications. The hegemony was collapsing from within while they focused on this one impossible world. But they had no choice now. 8 fleets destroyed meant they had to win this battle or face total dissolution of their empire. Analysis of the previous engagements? He asked, turning to his intelligence chief. Commander Hexnall activated a different display. Battle recordings played in the air above them, showing the final moments of the 8th Fleet. Cathar ships firing uselessly at human vessels that seemed to exist only partially in normal space. The humans appear to have technology that operates outside known physics. Hexnall reported their ships can phase through attacks, manipulate gravity on a massive scale, and project weapons that disintegrate matter at the atomic level. How is that possible? We don't know, sir. Our best scientists suggest they may have discovered principles of physics we haven't encountered, possibly ancient alien technology, or they may be more advanced than we initially believed. Kolrath reviewed the intelligence reports for the 100th time. Something about the human responses bothered him. Their ships always announced themselves before attacking. They gave repeated warnings. They seemed genuinely reluctant to destroy Cathvar vessels. What about their behavior patterns? He asked. Curious, sir. In every engagement, human forces offered multiple opportunities for our fleets to withdraw. They broadcast messages, asking our commanders to reconsider their aggression. Even during active combat, they seemed to prefer disabling our ships rather than destroying them outright. Primitive honor codes, Kolvrath suggested possibly. Many developing species have elaborate rules about warfare. They may feel compelled to offer mercy even to their enemies. The admiral felt a slight sense of satisfaction. Honor codes were predictable. They could be exploited. If the humans felt bound by some primitive sense of fair play, that gave him an advantage. Show me their defensive capabilities again. The display changed to show Earth's orbital space. A handful of space stations, some small defensive platforms, and perhaps 50 small ships that barely qualified as military vessels. That's it? Kolvroth asked. That's everything we can detect, sir. Their defensive grid appears designed for asteroid deflection and minor piracy. Nothing that should pose a threat to a major military force. Yet 8 fleets are gone. Yes, sir. Kolvrath studied the innocent-looking blue world. Either the humans had hidden capabilities that defied detection, or they had somehow acquired technology from another source. Ancient ruins, perhaps, or alliance with an unknown species. What do we know about human history? Very limited records, sir. They achieved faster than light travel only recently. Before that, they were confined to their single world system. No evidence of contact with other species, or access to advanced technology. Then how do you explain what happened to our fleets? Hexnall was quiet for a moment. Sir, there is one possibility we haven't fully considered, which is, what if we're wrong about their technological development? What if they're not primitive at all? The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Kolvroth had built his entire career on the assumption that the Cathvar were the dominant military force in the galaxy. The idea that some unknown species could be more advanced was almost unthinkable. If they were truly advanced, he said slowly, why would they limit themselves to one world? Why not build an empire like ours? Perhaps they choose not to. Some species are naturally isolationist. Or perhaps, Kolvrath said, his voice taking on a harder edge, they want us to think they're more powerful than they actually are. Smoke and mirrors to make a few hidden weapons seem like overwhelming force. This interpretation felt more comfortable. The Admiral had seen species try to bluff their way out of conquest before. Usually, it involved making a few ships seem like many, or hiding their population centers to make targeting difficult. Analysis of their communication patterns, he asked. Extremely polite, sir. Even when refusing our ultimatums, they used respectful language. When warning our fleets to withdraw, they said, please and thank you. Most unusual behavior for a species under attack. Kulvrath smiled slightly. Politeness was another sign of weakness. Truly dangerous species didn't waste time with pleasantries when facing annihilation. They're stalling, he decided, playing for time while they prepare whatever hidden defenses they have. Classic primitive behavior. He turned to address the full command staff. Officers, we're dealing with a species that has managed to hide their true capabilities from our scouts. They've used surprise and misdirection to destroy our previous fleets. But surprise only works once. Now we know they have advanced technology. Now we're prepared. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. This explanation made sense to commanders who had spent their lives conquering supposedly weaker species. Our strategy will be different from previous engagements. Kulvrath continued. We will not underestimate their defenses. We will not give them time to prepare, and we will not show them the same mercy they've shown our previous fleets. He activated the main tactical display. The 9th Fleet will arrive in 3 waves. The first wave will probe their defenses and identify their hidden weapons. The second wave will neutralize those weapons. The third wave will complete the conquest. What about their requests for us to withdraw? Asked one of the younger commanders. Psychological warfare, Kulvrath replied firmly. They're trying to make us doubt ourselves, make us think they're more powerful than they are. It's a common tactic among desperate species. The explanation satisfied most of the room. It was easier to believe that humanity was clever, but ultimately weak, than to accept that 8 hegemony fleets had been destroyed by genuinely superior technology. Sir, Zoltek said, intelligence suggests the humans may have some kind of spatial manipulation technology. Should we prepare countermeasures? Whatever they have, it can't work against this many ships. Kulvrath declared 10,000 vessels with combined firepower that could crack a planet. Even if their technology is more advanced than ours, there are limits to what any defensive system can handle. He was confident in the mathematics. No weapon, no matter how advanced, could target 10,000 ships simultaneously. No defense, no matter how clever, could protect against planet-killing levels of concentrated firepower. Deployment orders asked the fleet coordinator, begin the operation. All ships to Earth system. Maximum speed. We end this in one decisive battle. As the massive fleet began to move, Kulvrath felt the satisfaction of a plan coming together. The humans had gotten lucky against smaller forces. They had used surprise and superior technology to win battles against unprepared opponents. But luck ran out eventually, and no species, no matter how advanced, could stand against the full military might of the Kethvar hegemony. The ships began their journey toward Earth, leaving the rest of the hegemony virtually undefended. It was a massive gamble, but Kulvrath was certain it would pay off. The humans had shown mercy to previous fleets. That mercy was a weakness he intended to exploit. As the fleet entered hyperspace, long-range communications brought updates from across the Empire. More systems declaring independence, more vassal species refusing tribute, more signs that the hegemony's authority was crumbling. Sir, Hexnell reported privately, if this battle doesn't go well, we may not have an empire to return to. Kulvrath nodded grimly. Then we'd better make sure it goes well. But deep in his mind, a small doubt nagged at him. 8 fleets destroyed without a trace. Technology that seemed to violate physics itself. And through it all, the humans had remained polite, respectful, almost apologetic. What kind of species apologized while demonstrating the power to make entire fleets simply cease to exist? He pushed the doubt aside. The 9th Fleet was different, larger, better prepared, commanded by the best military mind the hegemony had ever produced. Whatever tricks the humans had used before wouldn't work against overwhelming force. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire empire toward its appointment with a small blue world that had somehow become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Behind them, the Kethvar Empire held its breath and waited to see if their greatest gamble would save them or destroy them completely. In the depths of space, 10,000 ships raced toward Earth, confident in their strength and certain of their victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Ninth Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm. 10,437 ships materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, in perfect formation. The largest armada in galactic history, stretched across space, in a display of power that could have intimidated entire star systems into surrender. Supreme Admiral Kulvroth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays populate with friendly contacts. Ship after ship appeared on the screens, until the numbers became almost meaningless. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, dreadnoughts, and supercarriers filled the space around them. Fleet deployment complete, reported Fleet Coordinator Zalch. All ships are operational and standing by for orders. Scan the system, Kulvroth commanded. I want to know everything that's changed since the 8th Fleet's destruction. The sensor sweeps began immediately. Long-range scanners probed every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris larger than a pebble. If the humans had built new defenses or moved ships into position, the Ninth Fleet would find them. Report, the Admiral demanded after several minutes of intensive scanning. Sir, the system appears unchanged from previous reconnaissance. Earth maintains its orbital stations and small defensive fleet. No new installations detected, no hidden ships or weapons platforms. Kulvroth studied the readings carefully. Everything looked exactly as it had before 8 fleets had vanished here. A peaceful world with minimal defenses going about its business, as if nothing had happened. Life signs on Earth. Approximately 8 billion humans, sir. Normal population, centers, normal activity patterns. No signs of military mobilization or evacuation. They're not even preparing for battle, murmured one of the younger officers. The Admiral nodded grimly. Either the humans were supremely confident in their hidden defenses, or they were too primitive to understand what was coming for them. Sir, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from the inner system. Put it through. The main view screen activated, showing a simple communication room. A single human sat at a metal desk, wearing the same style of blue uniform that Ambassador Harrison had worn months before. This one was younger, a female with brown hair and calm eyes. Greetings, she said, her voice carrying the same polite tone that had infuriated Kulvroth during previous communications. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Diplomatic Courtesy. We see that you've returned with additional ships. I am Supreme Admiral Kulvroth of the HFY Hegemony, he replied. You are looking at the largest fleet ever assembled. 10,000 ships with enough firepower to crack your world like an egg. I trust you're ready to reconsider your previous position. Captain Chen nodded thoughtfully. I understand the significance of your fleet, Admiral. However, our position remains unchanged. We respectfully request that you leave our space immediately. Kulvroth felt his temper rising. Here they were again with the polite refusal, as if 10,000 warships were no different from the handful they'd faced before. Captain, 8 fleets have come to this system. 8 fleets have been destroyed by whatever hidden weapons you possess. But this fleet is different. We're prepared for your tricks. We know you have advanced technology, and we've brought enough firepower to overwhelm any defense. I'm sure you have, Chen agreed. Your ships are quite impressive, but our request remains the same. Please leave our space while you still can. While we still can. Kulvroth's voice took on a dangerous edge. Are you threatening the largest fleet in galactic history? Chen's expression became genuinely sad. No, Admiral. We're not threatening you. We're trying to save you. The Admiral stared at the screen in disbelief. Save them from what? This single human, speaking from what appeared to be a tiny ship, was claiming she wanted to save his massive fleet. Save us from what exactly? From what happened to the others, Chen replied simply. Admiral, this is your final warning. Turn your ships around and leave. This is your last chance to walk away from this. Kulvroth's 4 hands clenched into fists. Final warning, last chance. The sheer audacity of it was beyond comprehension. Listen carefully, human. You are facing the complete military might of the HFY hegemony. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we possess is aimed at your world. Whatever defenses destroyed our previous fleets cannot possibly handle this level of force. Surrender now, or watch your entire species burn. Chen was quiet for a long moment, her head bowed as if in thought or prayer. When she looked up again, Her eyes were filled with what looked like genuine regret. "Admiral Kulvrath, we tried to do this the easy way. We asked you to leave. We warned you repeatedly. We even let your previous fleet see some of our capabilities, hoping you'd understand and choose to withdraw. And now you forced our hand." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, you have 1 minute to begin withdrawal procedures. After that, we will have no choice but to treat your presence here as an act of war." Kulvrath cut the transmission with a violent gesture. Around him, the bridge crew exchanged glances of amazement and anger. "Sir," Zaltek said carefully. "Your orders? All ships attack formation. Target their orbital installations first, then the planet's major cities. Show them what happens to species that threaten the hegemony." The massive fleet began to move toward Earth. 10,000 ships advancing in perfect formation, weapons charging, shields at maximum power. It was a sight that had terrified entire sectors of the galaxy. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting a single ship moving to intercept us." "One ship?" "Yes, sir. Small vessel appears to be the same one that transmitted to us. Designation diplomatic courtesy." Kulvrath looked at the tactical display. A tiny dot was moving away from Earth toward his enormous fleet. One ship against 10,000. "Sir, the human vessel is hailing us again." "Ignore it. All ships, prepare to fire on my command." The single human ship took position directly between the Cathvar fleet and Earth. At this distance, it looked like a mote of dust facing a metal hurricane. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies." "What are they saying?" "The same message repeating, 'This is your final warning. Please leave our space immediately.'" Krath laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "One ship. They sent one ship to stop us. Should we target it specifically, sir?" "No. When we open fire on Earth, it will be destroyed, along with everything else." The Admiral activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Kulvrath. You are about to witness the end of human resistance. Open fire on my mark." 10,000 ships armed their weapons simultaneously. The energy buildup was so massive that it created gravitational distortions visible on long-range sensors. Target locked on planetary defensive installations. All ships report ready to fire. Mark 10,000 ships fired at once. The combined energy release was equivalent to a small star-going nova. Beams and projectiles capable of destroying continents lanced toward Earth at nearly the speed of light. For a moment, it looked like the most devastating attack in Galactic. History was about to reach its target. Then reality broke. Space around Earth twisted and folded like fabric in a wind. The devastating barrage simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, stopped. The energy beams and kinetic projectiles hung motionless in space, as if frozen in time. "What?" Kulvrath began. The space around the human ship began to shimmer, not with heat or energy, but with something far more fundamental. It was as if the laws of physics themselves were becoming fluid. "Sir, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. Energy levels that shouldn't be possible. It's like space-time itself is being manipulated." More ships began to appear around Earth, not emerging from hyperspace, not decloaking, simply materializing as if they had always been there. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of vessels that defied every rule of naval architecture. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Ships that seemed to be built from crystallized light. Vessels that existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else entirely. Their hulls reflected starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How many ships are we looking at?" Kulvrath demanded. I can't get an accurate count, sir. They're not entirely in our dimension. Sensors are reading anywhere from 3,000 to 30,000 vessels, depending on which detection method we use." The human voice came across all communication channels simultaneously, somehow bypassing their communication systems entirely. "Admiral Kulvrath, this is Captain Chen. You were warned. You were given every opportunity to leave peacefully. Now you will see why this system has been marked as forbidden for so long." "Forbidden," Kulvrath whispered. The frozen attack that had been aimed at Earth suddenly reversed direction. 10,000 devastating energy beams and projectiles turned around in space and began racing back toward the Cathvar fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," the Admiral shouted. All ships scatter formation, but it was too late. The returned fire struck the Cathar fleet with perfect accuracy. Ships that had fired plasma beams found themselves struck by their own weapons. Vessels that had launched kinetic projectiles were destroyed by their own missiles. In the space of 30 seconds, a quarter of the Ninth Fleet simply ceased to exist. "Return fire," Kulvreth ordered desperately. "All remaining ships target the human vessels." The surviving Cathvar ships opened fire on the strange human fleet. Their weapons struck the crystalline ships and simply passed through them, as if they weren't there. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect." The human ships appear to be shifting in and out of normal space-time. Meanwhile, the human vessels began their own attack. But these weren't weapons in any sense that Kulvreth understood. Beams of light that seemed to analyze Cathbar ships down to the molecular level before gently disassembling them atom by atom. Fields of force that reached inside enemy vessels and simply turned off their power cores. Weapons that targeted individual crew members and transported them safely away before destroying the empty ships. "They're not trying to kill us," one of the officers reported in amazement. "They're removing our crews before destroying our ships." It was true. Throughout the fleet, Cathar personnel were disappearing in flashes of light, only to reappear on designated recovery vessels that the humans had somehow provided. The message was clear. They could have killed everyone instantly, but they chose not to. "Sir, we've lost 60% of the fleet. Remaining ships are requesting permission to withdraw." Kulvreth stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His mighty fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to operate outside the laws of physics itself. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "Captain Chen is hailing us again. Put her through." The human appeared on screen, looking as calm and polite as ever. Behind her, the battle continued, but she seemed completely unaffected by the destruction of the largest fleet in galactic history. "Admiral, you still have about 4,000 ships left. We can continue this demonstration, or you can order your remaining vessels to withdraw. The choice is yours." "How?" Kulvreth whispered. "How is this possible?" Chen's expression became gentle, almost pitying. "Admiral, your species is very young. You've built an empire based on the assumption that might makes right, that the strongest should rule. It's a natural phase for developing civilizations. What are you saying?" "We're saying that there are older ways of looking at the universe, powers, and principles that your science hasn't discovered yet. We're saying that strength isn't always about who has the biggest guns." Around them, more Cathvar ships were being carefully dismantled. Their crews rescued, their weapons neutralized, their vessels reduced to component atoms that drifted harmlessly in space. "Who are you?" Kulvreth asked. "We're humans," Chen replied simply. "We're your neighbors, and we really wished you had just left us alone." The admiral looked at his remaining fleet, then at the impossible human ships that seemed to dance between dimensions. The mathematics were clear. He could lose the rest of his ships here, or he could retreat and try to make sense of what he had witnessed. "All ships," he said quietly, "prepare for emergency withdrawal." "Thank you, Admiral," Chen said. "We're sorry it had to come to this." As the surviving Cathvar ships began their escape to hyperspace, Kulvreth took one last look at Earth. The small blue world continued its peaceful rotation, utterly unchanged by the battle that had just destroyed the largest fleet in galactic history. In the space of 1 hour, the Cathvar hegemony had ceased to be a major galactic power, and the humans had done it while saying please and thank you. The retreat to hyperspace felt like fleeing from a nightmare into a universe that no longer made sense. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller, taking with it everything Kulvreth thought he knew about power, warfare, and the natural order of things. The Ninth Fleet had found Earth, and Earth had sent them home with a lesson they would never forget. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Representatives from 300 species sat in stunned silence, watching the holographic recordings that Supreme Admiral Kulvreth had brought back from Earth. The impossible battle played out before them in perfect detail. 10,000 ships, reduced to scrap and memory in the space of a single hour. "This footage is authentic?" asked Councillor Vexani of the Thessarian Union. "Verified by 17 independent analysis teams," replied the Cathvar delegation's lead scientist. Every frame has been examined for tampering or falsification. These events happened exactly as recorded. The recording showed human ships that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, weapons that operated on principles unknown to galactic science, technology that made the hegemony's most advanced systems look like primitive tools. "How long has humanity possessed this level of technology?" asked another counselor. "We don't." "No," Admiral Colrath admitted from his position at the witness stand. His once proud military bearing had been replaced by something approaching humility. "Our intelligence suggested they were a young species with primitive technology. Obviously, our intelligence was wrong. Completely wrong," muttered Counselor Hexel of the Zephyrian Republic. "No one develops technology like this overnight. If humans have these capabilities, they've had them for a very long time." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The implications were staggering. If humanity had possessed this level of power all along, why had they hidden it? Why had they allowed themselves to appear weak and isolated? "There's something else," Kulvrath continued. "During the battle, the human commander made references to Earth being marked as forbidden and suggested that their system had been off limits for much longer than we realized." "Forbidden by whom?" demanded Counselor Yexmore of the Draconian Imperium. "That's what we need to find out." The council erupted into discussion. Species representatives argued among themselves, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Some demanded immediate action against the human threat. Others urged caution, pointing out that humanity had shown remarkable restraint during the battles. "Order," called Council President Nexel, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We will hear from our Historical Research Division." An elderly, Vexari shuffled forward, carrying a data tablet that looked older than most civilizations. Professor Loxon had spent his entire career studying galactic history, focusing on the ancient periods that most species preferred to forget. "Honored counselors," he began, in a voice cracked with age, "I have been reviewing our oldest star charts and historical records. I believe I may have found something relevant to the current situation." He activated his data tablet and new holographic displays appeared in the chamber. Ancient star maps thousands of years old filled the air above the assembled representatives. These charts date back to the earliest period of galactic exploration, when our ancestors first began mapping the stars. "Notice anything unusual about the Sol system?" The counselors leaned forward, studying the archaic symbols and notations. There, clear as starlight, was a marking around Earth's system that none of them had seen on modern charts. "What does it mean?" asked President Nexal. Roughly translated from Old Galactic, it means Sacred Guardian System. Do not approach under any circumstances. The chamber fell silent again. Sacred Guardian System. The implications of those words hung heavy in the air. Guardian of what? Someone whispered. Professor Loxon consulted his ancient records. That's where it gets interesting. According to these documents, Sol's system was designated as a sanctuary world by something called the First Civilization. "I've never heard of any First Civilization," declared Counselor Vexani. "That's because they deliberately erased themselves from galactic memory," the professor explained. "But traces remain in the oldest archives, fragments of records that survived the Great Forgetting. More ancient documents appeared in the holographic display, text in languages so old that few scholars could even attempt translation. What I've pieced together suggests that millions of years ago, there was a civilization that achieved technological capabilities beyond anything we can imagine. They could manipulate space and time, control fundamental forces, even create or destroy matter at will. What happened to them? They realized they had become too powerful for the galaxy's good. Their technology was so advanced that it posed an existential threat to all other life. So, they made a choice. Professor Loxon activated another display, showing what appeared to be a timeline of galactic history, with a massive gap in the middle. They voluntarily regressed themselves, gave up their technology, scattered their knowledge, and retreated to isolated worlds where they could live simple lives without threatening the rest of the galaxy. And you think humans are descendants of this first civilization? The evidence suggests it. Sol system was marked as a guardian sanctuary. The star charts show it as a place where the Watchers maintained their vigil. And look at this. A new document appeared, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. This is from the deepest archives of the Old Republic. It describes the Watchers as beings who chose to forget their power so that others might learn wisdom. They were tasked with monitoring the galaxy and intervening only if younger species became too dangerous to themselves or others. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If humanity were descendants of this first civilization, if they had been watching and waiting all this time, the politeness, Admiral Colvrath said suddenly. They kept saying please and thank you. They kept trying to give us chances to leave peacefully because they didn't want to hurt you. Professor Lokshan explained they've spent millions of years trying to avoid using their true capabilities. The fact that they revealed them at all suggests you pushed them past their limits of patience. But why now? Asked President Nex. If they've been hidden for millions of years, why reveal themselves now? The professor's expression grew grave. Because the Cathar hegemony was becoming exactly the kind of threat the Watchers were meant to stop. An aggressive empire seeking to conquer the entire galaxy. They probably hoped you would learn wisdom on your own. But when you didn't, they had to step in, Colrath finished. The question now, said Counselor Hextall, is what happens next? If humans have technology that advanced, if they've been watching us all along, what are their intentions for the rest of the galaxy? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. A calm, familiar voice filled the air. Council President Nexroll, this is Ambassador Harrison of the United Earth Government. We request permission to address the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in chaos. Harrison was the same human who had refused the Hegemony's ultimatum months ago. Representatives shouted questions and demands, but President Nexal called for order. Permission granted, Ambassador. Please proceed to the central podium. What happened next defied every security protocol the Council had ever established. Ambassador Harrison simply appeared in the chamber, materializing out of empty air, as if he had always been there. No transporters, no energy signatures, no indication of how he had traveled from Earth to the Council chambers. He looked exactly as he had during the original negotiations, calm, polite, and slightly sad. He wore the same simple blue uniform, carried no weapons, and showed no signs of concern, despite being surrounded by representatives of species that might consider him an enemy. Honored counselors, he began. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. We felt it was important to address the questions that have undoubtedly arisen following recent events. Questions? Sputtered Counselor Vexani. You've just demonstrated technology that makes the rest of us look like primitives playing with sticks. Harrison nodded. Yes, and we're sorry about that. We had hoped to avoid any such demonstration indefinitely. Who are you? Demanded President Nexral. What is humanity's true nature? The ambassador was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. We are exactly what we've always said. We are humans. We live on Earth. We want to be left alone to pursue our own development in peace. But the technology, the power you displayed is our inheritance, Harrison said simply. Long ago, our ancestors made choices that nearly destroyed the galaxy. They learned that there are some powers too dangerous to wield, some knowledge too terrible to possess, so they chose a different path. The path of the Watchers, Professor Loxon whispered. Harrison looked surprised that anyone remembered the old terms. Yes, the path of voluntary restraint. The choice to use power only when absolutely necessary to protect others from making the same mistakes we once made. And the Keth Vargamony was making those mistakes, asked Admiral Colrath. You were heading down the same path that led us to near extinction, millions of years ago. Conquest for its own sake. The belief that might makes right. The assumption that the strong should rule the weak. Harrison's expression grew even sadder. We've seen this pattern before. Species develop weapons, then use those weapons to build empires, then push their technology further to maintain those empires. Eventually, they develop capabilities that threaten all life in the galaxy. So you stopped us. We tried to warn you. We gave you every possible chance to choose a different path. We would have preferred that you learn wisdom on your own. And now, asked President Nexral. Harrison looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Now we have to be more direct about maintaining galactic stability. We can no longer remain hidden while aggressive empires threaten the peace. What does that mean for the rest of us? Demanded Counselor Hexel. It means we will be taking a more active role in galactic affairs, not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians. We will help species develop safely, prevent conflicts from escalating beyond reason, and ensure that no one civilization becomes powerful enough to threaten all the others. The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just revealing itself as a hidden power. It was announcing that it would now be actively managing galactic civilization. You're saying you're going to rule us? Accused Counselor Vexani. No, Harrison replied firmly. We're saying we're going to watch over you the same way we've been doing for millions of years, just more openly now. And if we refuse your protection? Harrison's smile was gentle, but somehow terrible. Counselor, you've seen what happens to those who choose the path of conquest and aggression. The Cathvar hegemony learned that lesson recently. We hope others will choose wisdom instead. President Nex stood slowly. Ambassador Harrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask, what are humanity's specific intentions regarding galactic governance? We intend to do what we've always done, Harrison replied. Maintain peace, prevent unnecessary conflicts, and help younger species avoid the mistakes that nearly destroyed us. We will not impose governments or dictate policies. We will simply ensure that no one's civilization becomes a threat to galactic stability, and our current governments, our current borders, our current way of life will continue exactly as they have, provided they don't threaten the peace. We're not interested in ruling anyone. We're interested in making sure everyone has the chance to grow and develop safely. Admiral Kolvrath stood up in the witness section. What about the hegemony? What's left of it? Harrison turned toward the Admiral with something approaching sympathy. The Cathar people will be fine, Admiral. Your empire is ended, but your species will survive and hopefully learn from this experience. We'll be providing assistance to help your world's transition to more peaceful governance. You're dismantling our entire civilization. We're giving your civilization a chance to become something better than an empire built on conquest and fear. The ambassador looked around the chamber one final time. Honored counselors, humanity returns to the galactic community, not as conquerors, but as the guardians we have always been. We hope this new era will be one of unprecedented peace and cooperation. He began to fade, becoming translucent as he prepared to leave the same way he had arrived. Wait, called President Nexral. Will we see you again? Harrison smiled. Oh yes, we'll be much more visible from now on. After all, it's hard to be proper guardians while hiding in the shadows. He vanished, leaving behind a chamber full of representatives, trying to comprehend the new reality of their galaxy. Outside the council chambers on worlds throughout the galaxy, the news spread rapidly. Humanity had revealed itself as the hidden power that had been shaping galactic history for millions of years. The age of conquest and empire was ending. The age of the Guardians had begun. And somewhere in the Sol system, on a small blue world that had seemed so helpless just days before, humanity quietly returned to its long vigil over the galaxy they had chosen to protect rather than rule. The stars looked different now, not cold and distant, but warm and watched over. Finally, after millions of years of hiding, Earth's children had come home to the galaxy they had never really left.